I was interested in knowing your thoughts about what's been happening in the last weeks with the impeachment trial and what's happening in this country with these political parties, which I personally think they're both problematic. And so I'm always like, I'm not a Red Sox or a Yankees fan. I'm here about the people. And so the people is my party. And I know it sounds corny and idealistic, but I don't give a fuck about the Democrats or the Republicans unless they are working towards the betterment of our people. Right. And so I wanted to know what you thought about, what were your thoughts about what's going on right now?
So, right now we have this impeachment trial that's taking place in the Senate, and the members of the Senate are the jurors for this particular trial, which is curious because some of those members are also co-conspirators. Right. Yes. So we got to just be clear about that. A lot of the people who are sitting in judgment right now were a part of creating the environment that allowed that domestic terrorist attempted insurrection or coup to take place on January 6th. A lot of them are a part of seeing the same things happening at state capitals all across the country. A lot of them are going to continue to be involved in these types of actions going forward. And so when I'm looking at what's happening right now, I'm reminded of what happened in Wilmington, North Carolina. Wilmington, North Carolina, there was a fusion type of government that was elected. I guess you could call it, the Black elected officials and their white allies. There was like a fusion type of government. This is post-slavery era, right at the cusp of Jim Crow really taking off. And you had an entire slate of Black elected officials and white elected officials who were allies, who were swept into office, massive elections. And this is important because at that time, Black people who got the right to vote, when I tell you Black people turned out to vote, you think what Stacey Abrams did was amazing. Let me not even put that comparison. She's amazing. She is a goddess. LaTosha Brown, a goddess. But we had even higher rates of voter turnout in the first few elections right after we got the right to vote with the passage of the 15th Amendment. Anyway, back to Wilmington, North Carolina. Wilmington, North Carolina, this fusion government is in office, and a lot of people were upset. A lot of people got very angry. A lot of people who weren't just angry, not just upset, they were armed. And they were a part of organizing groups like the Ku Klux Klan, like the Daughters of the Confederate. Like these were people who were actively supporting people who might consider, the Trump folks to be supporting. It's a very similar thing. They also engaged in an attempted coup, but they were successful. They ran that fusion government out of town. The Black elected officials and many of their white allies weren't just forced to resign their positions. They and their family had to flee. They and their entire communities had to leave the town because it was no longer safe for them, because when these fools came for that insurrection, they didn't bring bats and sticks and fire extinguishers. They brought their weapons and they were willing to use them. I had Michael Harriot on a couple of weeks ago, and he said that in one history book where he read, because this was something that happened a lot. Black people voted into office, white people come with the guns. Black people showing up and outvoting white people show up with the guns. And he talks about the fact that one of the history books that he read that was describing one particular incident, they described the floor of the Senate House, of the State House where this insurrection took place. And the history book said that the floor was left slick with the blood of the elected officials who were beaten and murdered as they tried to escape the crowd. Why do I mention Wilmington, North Carolina, and all the other insurrections that happened? Because what happened in Wilmington, North Carolina, after that coup, after they ran those people out of government, the people who did the running out, they stayed. They took a new vote. They took office. They took the seats that had just been vacated by violence and by force. And you know what they did for the next several decades? They ruled the town. And they just kept on going. And it was business as usual. So what we're seeing right now, I do not think we are going to get to 17 Republican senators who will agree that Donald Trump was involved in inciting this coup. I do not think we're going to get there because somebody said today that Donald Trump has bought enough. They said Joe Biden has bought enough vaccines to inoculate the nation. Donald Trump has bought enough senators to inoculate himself from any accountability. So I think that we're going to end up seeing that there is not going to be a conviction. And as a result, that means that Donald Trump is going to be allowed to seek office again. We're going to see this happen again. And it may not even just be Donald Trump next time, because there may be a smarter Trump, someone who's actually really good, not just being belligerent, but being belligerent and being someone who understands the way power actually shifts in those back rooms. So what I think that means for us is we got to be ready for living in an America that does not have the benefits of integration as we have traditionally come to know it. And I've said before on Karen's show, integration requires two things. Number one, a government willing to enforce anti-racism laws. And number two, a white community willing to keep their violent racist tendencies at home. And right now, we have a government that's reasserting itself as being willing to enforce anti-racist laws. But you don't have a white community that's willing to keep their racism quiet and at home. And now we have the issue of all of these judges that Trump was able to install in office. So now, even though Trump is not in office, we got people who are sitting on federal benches who are going to be sitting in those seats adjudicating cases where your cousins and them are going to have criminal cases. You're going to have employment discrimination cases. You're going to have all types of cases that we go to the federal courts for relief on. And the federal courts are now stacked with all of these judges who have white supremacist tendencies. So those of us who are integration babies, if you are Gen X or the very end of the boomers and on, and you've never seen what we saw on January 6th, like in real life, and this is like, oh snap, I read about this, or I remember watching Eyes on the Prize when I was in the 80s and a kid, and now I'm seeing this in real life. Our muscles for being able to resist white supremacy, I know I'm rambling on, Ida, so just
no, I love to hear it.
Are the muscles that our elders had, our ancestors had, for being able to deal with explicit, hostile, violent terrorism under the guise of white nationalism, our muscles have atrophied. I don't know what it is to see a body swinging from a tree. I don't know what it is to have to run for my life down a dark road because a caravan full of white nationalists is behind me and they're trying to catch me and my family. I don't know what that is. I know my elders do. I know my ancestors do. So those of us who are now living in post-Trump America, where it has now been acceptable for closeted racists to come out, they are making HR decisions. They are making loan applications decisions. They are determining who gets to be a school teacher in your building. They are creating curriculum. They're determining medical and healthcare policy in your community. They are everywhere. And for me, it's kind of like in the Matrix, when Neo is in the Matrix and he knows that anytime you're in the Matrix that an agent could pop up at any moment. If you haven't seen The Matrix, you got to see The Matrix. God, I'm dating myself with these examples. But point being, we're surrounded and we might even be outnumbered. And even if we weren't, most of us are out-weaponed. So we have to really be clear about working together and building collaborations and fusion where we can, because that is going to be the thing that can hold us together, because there is so much right now that is really intending to pull us apart.